All right, so with that out of the way, it's time for us to reveal number 8 on the list of the top 9 greatest promos and interviews in WWE history. This is my personal list. I have ranked what, in my opinion, are the 9 best promos or interviews specifically in WWE history. And last week, we kicked things off with number 9, Vince McMahon's Life Sucks and Then You Die promo from SmackDown in 2000. This week, we are fast-forwarding 13 years to number 8 in the countdown to one of the greatest hoaxes in WWE history, something I reviewed in full on Sound Off episode 280. One of the more unlikely people to appear in a countdown of the greatest promos of all time, especially when you consider all the years this guy spent working for the company before finally getting his big break. He debuted for them in 1996, one of the longest tenured guys on that roster. And he didn't win his first world title until 2011. And it was on the June 17, 2013 edition of Monday Night Raw that Mark Henry teased that he would be announcing his retirement on the show. And in fact, I can remember that day. I remember he was tweeting up a storm. He was tweeting everybody, hey, you should watch Raw. He tweeted the coach at ESPN, tune into Raw tonight, I'm going to be announcing my retirement. And it was believable enough to think that this would be it for him because he had been off TV with some injuries for a while. It seemed like most of his career was plagued by injuries. He just turned 42, I believe. He'd been with the company, like I said, forever. It seemed like it was the right time for him to call it a day. So he got that Hall of Pain run, which was the best run of his career. He won the World Heavyweight title. It felt like it was going to be it for him. John Cena had just beaten Ryback the night before to retain the WWE title in a 3 Stages of Hell match, otherwise known today as 3 Hours of Raw. He was in the ring, Mark Henry's music hit. And he walked out wearing what has become his infamous salmon-colored jacket. Whenever they get that Physical Hall of Fame up and running, they better have that salmon jacket in a display case because that's where it belongs. I mean, they have Archie Bunker's chair sitting in the Smithsonian. WWE can get Mark Henry's salmon jacket into their Hall of Fame. Cena goes to leave. Henry tells him, John, no, you stay because I want you to hear this too. And what sold this for me was that constantly throughout this segment, the crowd would erupt into chants of thank you, Henry, one more match, sexual chocolate, which was funny. But Henry would stop and he would wipe away tears. Like he was crying throughout this entire thing. And in my mind, I'm thinking like Mark Henry can't possibly be this good of an actor. This has to be real. That's what I'm thinking as I'm watching this. He said he was a seasoned vet when Cena came into the company in 2002, and he turned to Cena. Cena was standing on the apron, and he turned to Cena and said, you're doing an awesome job, and at the rate you're going, you may be the greatest WWE champion of all time, which was maybe the only time in this segment that Henry was booed. I guess he got booed when he actually formally announced his retirement, but one of the few times he got booed was complimenting John Cena and calling him the greatest of all time. He said if he had any regrets about his career, it's been that he's been the World Heavyweight Champion, he's been an ECW champion, he's been the strongest man in the world. He hasn't had the success that John Cena has had, but he thinks he did pretty well for himself. And it all just came across as very heartfelt and very genuine. Not like something was scripted for him to say, like, okay, he's out there memorizing lines or reciting lines in a promo or something like that. He says, I'm out there to formally announce my retirement from the active roster. And at this point, Cena gets in the ring, he hands him the WWE title to pose with, and Henry gives it back to him and says, this is something you need to earn. And the key here is he comes across as totally sincere, totally humble. He says, I've traveled the world twice, 3 times, quadruple times over. Don't cry for me, Argentina. I'm doing enough crying for everybody. Today, I stand before you, a proud man, and, I've been on the road close to 200 nights a year. And then he played the family card, which just put the whole thing over the top for me. Because, again, I bought this whole thing hook, line, and sinker when it happened. He talks about his family. He got you with the family card here. He played the family card. He says his wife will get to see more of him now than she probably wants to. He talked about his son. He talked about him being a fanatical wrestling fan. He mentioned his daughter who cries when he leaves home. That right there was the money line. And he goes, "Baby, I'm coming home." And everybody gives him a standing ovation. Crowd bought into this. I bought into this. Cena gets in the ring. He raises Henry's arm. He goes in to hug him. And that's when Henry lowers the boom, picks him up, drops him with the world's strongest slam. And, sometimes you don't realize how great something is until you watch it back years later. Or a movie will come out. And let's say the movie doesn't really do very well, but then years later, all of a sudden, the movie becomes a cult classic. I knew the minute that he slammed Cena that this was one of the greatest promos I'd ever seen. I didn't need to wait 3 years to look back and go, you know what? That was one of the greatest promos of all time. Like, I knew when I watched it, like, this was fucking awesome. And this was one of the best that I had ever seen. Because it just worked. It worked on every level. It was this heartfelt promo from this guy that had been around forever, and he got you to believe, and he got you to not feel sorry for him, but just kind of be sad that it was all over, even though I'm sure myself and a lot of people for years were like, aside from the Hall of Pain run, which was good, I enjoyed him during the Hall of Pain run. Aside from that, Mark Henry coming on TV, it was like, oh God, like, ugh, But here he was, and people chanting one more match. They wanted to see him come back, and he's talking about his family, and the tears are flowing. It was so perfect. It was so effective. It was so perfect. I knew the minute he slammed Cena that it was one of the greatest promos I'd ever seen. And it got me, it shouldn't have, because it's wrestling, and I should be conditioned not to believe a damn thing that they tell me. If they tell you so-and-so is going to retire tonight, chances are they're not retiring, okay? Look at what they tried to do with Sasha Banks this week. I didn't buy that for a second, and part of that is this damn Mark Henry promo. That's probably a big part of the reason why I didn't believe it with Sasha. I should have known something was up with Henry when they showed him backstage. He was talking to different people. He was hyping up that he was going to retire, and like when Edge retired. That was a legitimate, serious retirement. I don't remember them showing Edge backstage, going up to people, shaking their hands, playing it up like, this is Edge's final night. He went out there and he dropped the bomb. You kind of thought maybe something was up, but he went out there, he dropped that bomb, and I remember feeling bad because I didn't buy what Edge was saying until like halfway maybe, or a little more than halfway through his promo. I kind of realized, oh shit, like he's actually retiring. I was so jaded and I was so conditioned to believe that this can't possibly be happening that I didn't buy it when it happened. So the Henry thing, having fallen for it, has made me even more cynical and skeptical when it comes to stuff like this. I blame this promo for that. But Cena's laying there on the mat. He looks down at Cena. He's yelling at him, "You think it's that easy? I got a lot left in the tank." And I look back on this promo and I just think to myself, what a shame. What a shame that he was just used as a placeholder opponent for Cena, to get Cena to SummerSlam. I know they had their big plan for Cena and Daniel Bryan, and they had a great match, and I love the Authority swerve. This was before I realized the Authority was not going anywhere for 3 years. I actually loved what they did that night at SummerSlam. I thought it was great. The whole Randy Orton turn. So I get that. They had their plans. The timing just wasn't right. But that doesn't make it any less of a shame. That they had John Cena not just beat him, but they had him tap out Mark Henry in the STF. He tapped this guy out like he was just a dude on the roster. And I was at that Money in the Bank show too. That was the one in Philadelphia. People wanted to see Mark Henry win that match. And to have him tap out to Cena was just such a waste of a great turn, especially since they turned him back babyface the night after. It's like, when he did this to Cena, it's like, oh, here we go. Hall of Pain Mark Henry is back. He's going to go on one last monster ripper run here. And it lasted a few weeks. Cena tapped him out. The next night he's back on TV and he turns face. The Shield attacked him. And babyface Mark Henry is back. And of course they did nothing with him after that. And it was like none of this ever happened. But it did. And it's one of the greatest promos of all time.